Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Frozen Fractals event, in which the Living Rime is added to the game. So this week, of course, most noteworthy thing is for this Thanksgiving weekend. With all the holidays, we have ourselves a Vault event weekend, so you happen to have off or have some free time. Great time to be grinding for Vault Keys, Gems, and other various valuable resources within the game. And as by far the most noteworthy thing we'll be having, as far as the event troop is concerned, a great time to stock up on green, blue, arcane trade stones. The troop itself, mostly geared as a early game freezer. However, if you are looking for an early game freezer, just completing out the Nexus Kingdom and then doing Elemental's Hero class fully traded is probably a better bet, but this thing can still be a good alternative nonetheless. It deals some damage to an enemy, and then there's a 50% chance to freeze all enemies below them, so everything except first slot. Although, of course, you basically hit first slot, and then it will freeze everything but first slot. It does still have a way to freeze first slot off of its first trait, which whenever it takes skull damage, it will go and freeze them. Also has a mean to freeze, and like many things in this kingdom, has a 65% score reduction, which is a pretty beefy amount as far as how much it could reduce. Pretty much a 2/3 reduction, essentially. Overall, it's okay. For the most part, it's basically just early game freezer. If you don't happen to have a freeze alternative, it can end up being one, but it will get quickly replaced by many of the other billion different ways to freeze within the game, so it'll essentially just be an extra Kingdom Star for Dhrak-Zum, which currently brings it to power level 18 as it currently stands. As far as, while we're here also, so as far as the trial is concerned, it's not too bad this time around. It is a little bit of a stat-dependent week, but basically you want to use Ice Troll as your meat shield. You don't really ever want to take his mana. His whole role is to die. I would say is the main thing you want to do with him. Krish Hound here will be your tank. He also gives a little bit of extra brown mana. He will be particularly good if you have lower stats, or if you just happen to have be earlier on in the game, mid-game, pretty much anything other than almost all kingdoms maxed or so. You might end up needing to utilize this more. This is a very stat-dependent week, and you will end up needing the halving that he has. Essentially, whenever you go and hit an enemy, they will have its life and armor. The two ideal ways to use this is if you haven't really hit the first slot yet on the enemy team, you would cast it on first slot, second slot, third slot, fourth slot, and essentially just cast it once on every single thing in order to essentially have all their stats. And this is the same damage regardless of what your stats are, which is one of the reasons why this is pretty beneficial even if you have a lower amount of total stats, because this thing's damage is always consistent regardless of what your stats are, as it's dependent on enemy stats. It also gets to create a bunch of blue, but from doing this, which is another utility that you might end up utilizing for, even if you're not necessarily using it the halving aspect. And you might notice this team has a distinct lack of anything that uses blue, despite having two things that create blue, one useless one and one that actually can have their stats. However, there is a way to use it, King Bloodhammer. He ends up converting all blues to Doom Skulls, and this will be the main way that you end up utilizing your blues. So you would use Krish Hound, go from top to bottom, hit all of them once to have their stats. You then get your alignment on King Bloodhammer. Of course, you'll need to get mana through other means, but once he ends up having his alignment, you will go and cast him. You'll do 1 billion damage, clear the entire board, get a bunch of mana accumulation from that, and pretty much just rinse and repeat. Your main two damage sources will definitely be King Bloodhammer and Bone Binder in combination. While the Krish Hound will be able to get them down initially, your main finisher are going to be the two that actually do Doom Skulls. The Bone Binder is pretty interesting, mostly for his summon. He creates 7 Doom Skulls, which is nice. This means that your summon will end up taking the hits instead if you end up missing, instead of whatever your current first slot is. Because he creates 7 Doom Skulls and then summons either a Dwarven Zombie or a Slayer Ghost. And this new meat shield will end up taking the blunt of the force if you miss, and if you don't miss, well, you get an extra turn, you get a bunch of mana, you'll get a bit of poke in there, and you kind of just keep doing the cycle, and just keep going between King Bloodhammer and Bonebinder. Krish Hound, you can technically even just avoid casting if you so choose. It really just depends on the situation on if you do or don't. But if you happen to have lower stats, it is definitely going to be worthwhile to spam him a bit more, just to make sure that you get them down. You'll probably need to cast this at least 2 to 3 times, but being able to have enough opportunity to cast it once on everything will be pretty nice. And ideally, of course, you do not want to multi it onto any unit, as the first value will end up getting a 50% reduction. However, doing 50% of 50% is not going to do nearly as much, so do make sure to pretty much only cast them 4 times max. You can still cast them more for the mana accumulation, but as far as the actual halving, he won't get much of an effect beyond that. Like a single skull or so is almost as much damage as that by that point. So you're mostly going to be using the other two as your main overall damage. So overall, not too bad of a trial event. Actually, a bit of a synergy there too. Of course, most of them have a bit of a synergy, but I actually kind of like the premise of that team. And given how weak the enemy team is, it shouldn't be that bad overall. As far as the main event week, also, I'm still... is it just me, or is it really annoying that these things are two different buttons. Like, I'm so used to, I can't show it right now because these things don't scroll, but I'm so used to going like up and down, or, you know, you can go up and down here, but you can't go like left or right here. If you try doing so, you know, it doesn't do anything. You have to like click through these, and I keep clicking based on location, like, oh, I want to go to guild for the guild event, but right now it's calendar. If I click there, if you have it the other way around. But anyways, Tower of Doom. So do not forget, because I actually forgot when I was making some teams for this video. And since I already made the teams, I was like, oh, I'll just show both of them. So we have twice as many teams to go show for Tower of Doom this week. However, do not forget to set the ring onto your team. It is required for 2x score on the final fight. You are allowed to use a team that does not have the ring on all the other fights. So like any of these prior to it. However, the actual Doom itself, all the way to the right, you will always have to make sure you use whatever the new weapon is, as it will earn you 2x score. This is exceedingly important. Otherwise, if you're just doing like, you know, from floor 1 to 25 for full completion, you will miss out on 25 Dooms defeated if you do not end up doing this. So 100% make sure you remember to put the ring onto your team. You don't have to upgrade it. You can literally just plop it there and just have it exist in third slot and just have a team of 3 and just have your hero just do whatever in last slot and to make sure it doesn't block anything. But make sure it is on your team for every single Doom fight for the double points. Aside from that, it plays the same as always. Just communicate with your guild where all of the better rooms are, and just take only those. You don't want to take every single room because unlike many other modes like this, where you only use 1 sigil for the entire floor, this mode you use 1 sigil per fight. So you want to minimize how many fights you do, only taking the more important ones, like the unlocks, fireballs, heroisms, and anything that your guild wants to end up going for as far as unlocks. Anyways, aside from that, as far as other events that we have going on throughout the week, we have a few. This Tuesday, we have ourselves the Illithia faction. Illithia, it's okay as an AoE spammer, so you can end up doing pure faction, not too bad. We're getting a little Kershhound pet, which I believe is just Kingdom Bunch for Dhrak-Zum. Thursday, we have the Slayer class, which pretty underwhelming. It's also weird because it has a triple damage burning tree, but the kingdom itself has like no burning options whatsoever, since it's more of a freeze-based location. It's just really weird that it has fire tree. Since it's in a location that is very much not fire-based at all. Pretty much the exact opposite with how ice and everything it is. And of course, this Friday, we have ourselves the Vault Event Weekend. Great time to be grinding within the game and get those precious Vault keys, which I still haven't opened all of them from the previous one. I need to go open them all soon. And you start running like 100 keys a day just to go through all those, but you start burning through the pile. Anyways, aside from that, Soulforge. So as far as Soulforge is concerned, as far as mythics are concerned, I didn't actually check this earlier. I don't think we have anything good here, though. Doesn't seem like it, unless you're just getting it for completion's sake. I guess if you are going to mention any mythic, the main one to mention is maybe Grey King. It's decent for some Guild War related things. Very rarely does it get brought out, but it's an interesting utility troop when it does. It destroys all gems of a chosen color, and then all enemies of that specific color that you chose. You'll end up dealing a bunch of true damage to them. They are also mana drained, silence, and frozen. This is really good in combination with a stun option, as you pretty much have them nearly fully disabled at that point, assuming they don't have like a Pervious or such, in which case you can add both stun and curse if you really want to. But he's basically just a true damage synergy troop, particularly when your enemy team has a lot of the same colors. So if it's like 4 times the same color or something similar, you could even do that for the Dooms this week if you really wanted to, if you want to go down the true damage route. Well, none of the teams I show end up utilizing it in that particular way. However, all the Dooms are 4 of the same color. So for example, when you fight the yellow Dooms, all 4 of them are yellow. When you fight the red Dooms, all 4 of them are red, so on and so forth. So you actually can get a little bit more value from him in that regard. But he's basically just used as a utility troop in true damage teams. Not always used, as his overall damage is worse than other really accessible things like Tesla, for example. However, the utility of it is the mana drain, silence, and freeze, and the main reason why he's used, other than the fact that he also gets follow-up. Tesla ends its turn. However, this actually has extra turn potential as well as board control potential, so you're getting the mana accumulation from every gem destroyed, as well as the potential cascading mana and the potential cascading extra turns. So it's decent when it does get used. However, it's situational when it's usable. As far as weapons are concerned, nothing too noteworthy. Actually, I shouldn't say that. There actually is a few kind of noteworthy things. Stone Slicers, I almost didn't see the Stone Slicer there. Stone Slicers definitely, by far, if you're picking like any one weapon to get this week, that you probably don't want to leave without, it is going to be Stone Slicer. I ended up mentioning when we were mentioning the Naga team, I believe at the beginning of this month, was it? When we got that new Naga that ended up synergizing basically into itself with all those fire gems. I ended up mentioning that there are a couple weapons that feed back into themselves. The Naga one was one of them, and another one that does is the Stone Slicer. It creates a bunch of purple and brown gems, and guess what uses purple? The Stone Slicer itself, and guess what uses a brown? Nearly every construct in the entire game. So it ends up getting a lot of value in 4x construct teams. You can end up using it with the Geomancer hero class for 50% mana start across the entire team. And out of all the weapons that feed back into themselves, I would say Stone Slicer is actually the strongest one out of all of them. It feeds mana back to itself. It has the best synergies. It has the Lord of Slaughter. It has the billion brown things that are underneath construct. And nearly all of them are. It ends up having, and of course, Slaughter is mostly used not because he uses brown, but because he converts the browns into Doom Skulls. Kind of similar to the premise that we're doing with the Trial this week, where even though the team doesn't use anything that utilizes blue, it utilizes a blue into Doom Skull. It is kind of the same premise with that, with the Lord of Slaughter. But the other really big benefit is 50% mana start. You have Geomancer hero class, so you get 50% mana start across your entire team, and yeah, it just goes up really quickly. 100%, make sure to get it. I don't feel like I build around it too often, but it is a really, really good weapon. Aside from that, Doomed Blade's pretty nice. Just a standard full AoE weapon. I would say it's a bit lower priority, but it's definitely a nice one to have your hands on at some point. So if you have the resources for it, it might be worth considering. And aside from that, while it's not that useful of a weapon, I do actually use this weapon for a couple of the teams this week. Mostly because we have a lot of Dhrak-Zum restrictions, given that it's Dhrak-Zum week. And if you're looking for something to make some of the events a little bit easier to build around this week, you might want to consider the Korag's Invention. You will never use it again until the next Dhrak-Zum event. However, if you just want to make it just a little bit easier, if you don't really have that many options, consider getting the Korag's Invention, as you can build around it for pretty much every single Dhrak-Zum related event this week, and you'll probably be fine. Most notably Underspire. If you feel like you have nothing for Underspire this week, this is probably the thing you want to go to connect your team together, and just end up running this with whatever you have that can end up functioning with it. And that's pretty much everything. Oh wait, there's actually one other thing. Let's see. I always forget to check this, but isn't one of the pieces of one of these from Dhrak-Zum? I always forget at the beginning of every single week. It's like, oh, is this the week? Is this the week? I could have sworn that one of the mythic weapons, which, why am I having so much trouble trying to find? Oh, those are always available. Where's the, is it? I know what it is. Dustbringer. Where is it? Yes, there it is. I knew it. The Ankh of Nefertani. Get this. This might almost be higher priority than the really good Stone Slicer. Maybe not. But if you're planning on getting Dustbringer anytime within the next year, do not forget to get the Ankh of Nefertani. The Ankh of Nefertani is one of the 3 pieces you need for Dustbringer. And even if you feel like you're not going to get Dustbringer anytime soon, you have to wait until once you do feel like you want to get Dustbringer, you would have to wait until a Dhrak-Zum event rolls around, a Sword's Edge event rolls around, and a Drifting Sands event rolls around. So just to make sure you only have to wait for 2 of those, or even less if you already have some other components, make sure to get the Dhrak-Zum's Ankh of Nefertani right now. As if you don't get it this week and you want to get Dustbringer, you're going to have to wait at minimum all the way until the next Dhrak-Zum event, and possibly even when these other 2 all cycle back around. So definitely make sure to end up getting this just for the inevitable eventual Dustbringer. Dustbringer, I personally don't feel like I use it too much these days. However, it is still a pretty good weapon. It's a brown, green, purple AoE weapon that hits everything. I guess this thing has gotten a bit less usage due to Wand. So Wand ended up making it so you didn't really ever need this for the most part, since you could just end up going Wand and just cover all colors pretty easily, since it covers every single color in the entire game, all 6 of them. So that has made this a little bit less relevant. However, there are still a lot of instances where you might not want to go Black Manacle, and you can actually get more value from a Dustbringer onto your team. So worth considering, and you need this Ankh of Nefertani as one of those 3 components, so do not forget. So that might even be higher priority than some of the better ones that you might actually want, rather than so you can end up getting them all. Otherwise, you'd have to wait a pretty long time on it. But I don't know, you can get whatever you end up needing. But those are the main ones. Doomed Blade to consider, Stone Slicer being the absolute strongest of them, Korag's Invention being the main one to help you with the events this week, Ankh of Nefertani if you want to go get Dustbringer. And that's pretty much all of them there. Anyways, as far as other events that we have going on, let's see, we went over that. Okay, let's go over to the teams then. I don't believe I missed anything else. So, as far as teams, I accidentally, at the beginning of this, I got slightly into the recording, and then like midway through, I was like, wait, I'm forgetting something. And that one thing that I was forgetting was I accidentally didn't make these initial teams with Doom Ring. So I'm going to be showing 2 teams for the high and low range. One using the ring, one not using the ring. Keep in mind, do not use the non-ring teams on the Doom fight. You will lose out on a Doom every single time. These teams, like this one right here, is only meant for the battles leading up to it. You can technically do this every single time. I normally don't build alternative teams for this, as it's normally just best to use one single team the whole time. However, since I accidentally did, we're going to show them because I already built the teams anyways. So, As far as the one with the ring, we're going with a High King Iron Gut Vashtagan. Really fun combo, and there's not too many instances where you could really do it, and Blue Doom is actually one of the situations where it comes out. So High King Iron Gut, of course, devouring everything that can be devoured. This is more relevant to higher your attack is, which is one of the reasons why it's on the high rarity team, and of course it uses 2 mythics. But as soon as it gets devoured, it's devour everything that can be devoured. From there, Balder. Balder's a really fun blue troop that I don't feel like gets utilized too much, mostly because you need really specific teams to kind of make it work. But it creates 4 skulls, which doesn't sound like that a lot, but it's boosted by blue allies at a 4 times boost ratio. So that means if you have an entire team of blue, which you have to use anyways for a blue Tower of Doom event, you will end up creating 20 skulls. 20 skulls is a lot of skulls. You're pretty much extra turn every single time, assuming you are not frozen on your first slot. And if you already have a Devour off a High King Iron Gut, you just took all their attack value. And now you have a very big hit that you can end up doing. And you'll have 20 skulls to do it with. And you might be wondering, of course, the Doom itself has immune to Devour, insta-kill, everything like that. And that is what the Vashtagan is for. So if you don't want to go kill it out with the Balder, or your High King Iron Guts you just want to kind of get rid of just as a finisher, you can end up using Vashtagan. It devours an ally, which you could do on High King Iron Gut. And then it summons a Daemon there, which isn't too relevant, but it'll basically meet shield for you. And the main relevant thing is it deals a bunch of true damage scattered across the enemy, boosted by his life. So you can utilize all the life that High King Iron Gut has devoured from the opposing team, and then turn that into a scatter true damage, which will concentrate on whatever's left. And if there's only one thing left, because all that's left is a single Doom, you can use that to often just one-shot the Doom once you have High King Iron Gut devoured and Balder skulled all of the other 3. So you go and devour with High King Iron Gut anything that can be, Balder whatever's left if they happen to have some imperviouses, and then once you're down to just a Doom, you end up killing it with Vashtagan into High King Iron Gut. And that's pretty much the whole premise, and Ring just exists. Next, we have ourselves the high rarity team that does not use Ring. Do not use this on the Doom fight. But it's basically just Rush Down Skull. We're using Wand for Bless and Curse whenever we need it. And we're just using just a billion different things that can end up doing skulls here. Random going with Lord of Slaughter for the Doom Skull convert. The Wild King to end up getting attack and enrage to make our Doom Skulls even better. And so that we have some mana accumulation, we're using Possessed King so that every single time we take an extra turn from the billion skulls we have, we will end up exploding 2 random gems. And one nice synergy that has with Doom Skulls in particular is those 2 random gems will hit Doom Skulls, and those Doom Skulls will explode, leading to even more than 2 explodes overall across the entire board. So you end up getting a lot of mana accumulation, even though Wand kind of looks like the only mana accumulator. The amount that you'll end up getting from the Doom Skulls, combined with the Doom Skulls with the explosions, ends up being quite a bit overall. As far as the lower rarity team that does use Ring, pretty much a standard Rowain spam. You can also go down Tesla spam, but the other team was Tesla spam, so I figured we go down Rowain spam. Basically, just using the high armor boost ratio in order to kill them out. And this actually does utilize the cast of Ring. You do not have to upgrade Ring, however, on this particular team, upgrading Ring is a bit more beneficial, as we are actually casting it, whereas the other 3 teams, or I should say the other team, does not end up casting at all. But this ends up giving a bunch of magic to all allies, which Rowain doesn't benefit as much from, and +1 per tempering level, so you really don't gain as much of a benefit from upgrading it as the magic from upgrading it. Not really what you're needing here. What you really need is the armor. It gives a bunch of armor to blue allies, which of course has to be your entire team due to the blue restriction, and if the enemy has a Doom, which given that you'll be using on the Doom fight, guaranteed, you'll gain 10 attack. But basically, we're just utilizing it for the armor. This gives us a bunch of armor to Rowain. We then get a 2 times boost ratio on that. So let's say you're doing 50 armor, that is 100 additional damage for Rowain. And yeah, it's a lot of damage. And you can cast both of them. Windstinger's just here to feed them green. And tank if you start losing a couple troops. As it does have a little bit of score reduction there. Also has Hunter's Mark to get a little bit of skull poke if you want. Anyways, as far as the lower rarity one that does not end up using Ring, we're just going Tesla Rush. We're just going with a double Tesla. You can technically do this with a Ring team as well, if you so choose. Going like something in first slot, double Tesla Ring could be your team, where that first thing in first slot is your mana accumulator, the double Tesla is double Tesla, and your last slot is just Ring doing nothing, unless you do want to cast a sun, but you generally don't want to block Tesla as much on mana if you can help it. But basically, we're just mana accumulating, just using all low rarity stuff. Unfortunately, Tesla itself isn't that low rarity, but something that you should try prioritizing, try to get in the lower rarity range, just because of how much it can carry you through the whole game. But you can do kind of similar premise, of course, with Rowain, as we already showed with the other team here, which, even though it looks a little bit different, is overall the same premise. We're just using a double scatter or split damage troop in order to kill out everything. Next, we have ourselves the team for the Dhrak-Zum event, or sorry, the Dhrak-Zum faction event, which is Illithia. As far as Illithia is concerned, is a blue-purple restriction. As far as the lower rarity team, we are once again going with a Rowain Rush, just using Black Manacle here. You could use Urskia Shield or whatever else you want to. I just use Black Manacle because I always forget to use Urskia Shield whenever I put it on a team, so I'm just going with that. As far as the higher rarity team, pretty much just a standard hiking iron Zolgov team. We have access to blue and purple, so we have access to every single component we need to just build a pretty standard high rarity team for that. As far as the pure faction is concerned, you can spam 4 Illithian servitors if you want. However, I am using 1 tank here just to make sure we ideally don't die, as a 50% score reduction also ends up giving you a bunch of life and armor, though it does have a little bit of a limit because if your enemy team starts to run out of magic, you will no longer be able to go get that life and armor anymore. As far as your main win condition, you'll be casting AoE Illithians, the Illithian Servitor, in order to do all your damage. It deals a bunch of damage to all enemies and steals 2 magic from all survivors. Keep in mind, this magic steal does take place after the fact. It does literally mean survivors in the sense that if you kill with this, it will not steal the magic. It also does not give you the magic beforehand. So for example, if we have 54 damage, it will do 54 damage, then give us 8 magic, assuming we steal from everyone. It does not give you the 8 magic, then do damage. It does it in the other way around. So the magic steal is after the damage rather than before. There are quite a few things that actually end up doing it before, so this does make it a little bit weaker. However, it still allows it to scale, given that you're going to be needing to cast these quite a few times anyways at the higher range. Like if you're doing level 500 pure faction, you're going to be casting them a good number of times. Even with 20% extra stats, you're still going to cast them need to cast them a lot. Plus there's some spell reduction that you'll need to deal with on the enemy team, which you also get to benefit from. But the enemy team's also going to have it, which is going to take them even longer to kill, so you'll be able to get quite a bit of magic stacked up, even though he does it after the fact rather than before. Anyways, as far as the Slayer class event is concerned, taking place this Thursday, we're just basically just running a full AoE rush. You could run whatever weapon you want. I happen to have Dawnbringer here. You might want to consider the gem hammers. One thing that's nice about this is that it starts with full mana, so it's really good at killing out a single unit. This is particularly good if we have to deal with the 100% revive troop, as that Drake will end up being able to be killed with using your gem hammers and just use it with their full empower, so they will immediately be able to kill anything that revives. It deals some damage to an enemy and then eliminates some attack from them. And if the enemy is a monster, you'll also do triple damage. I can't remember if we really have many monster options during those events. However, I know the one from Leonis Empire has 1 monster in the lead, so maybe that one will be slightly weak to it. But you're mostly just using this to deal with the Drake Rider revive at 100% and, just general damage if you need to go kill anything, combined with your skulls and just AoE or whatever you want to run as your main hero damage option there. As far as Underspire is concerned, it is a Dhrak-Zum restriction, and this is where I was mentioning Korog's Invention. Korog's Invention is going to be most useful for Underspire this week. If you feel like you don't have anything to end up building a team with, you probably want to consider it, as I actually use it on both teams here, as we do not have a particularly high amount to work with. You can go with like an Explodey Revive weapon or something similar, but this I do feel like will give a little bit of quicker speed, though you could go with a safer weapon if you so choose, if you have access to it, or you just get from Soulforge. As far as the teams are concerned, this one would technically be double of the brown gem dragon. However, this was the one I only got 1 copy of that took me absolutely forever, like 20 something eggs. I think it was like 27, I want to say, something absurd. But this was the last one we got, and is the only gem dragon I only have 1 copy of. But if you ended up getting multiple of him during the Diamantina grind, it is worth considering doubling up on him and using 2 instead of 1. You could even go 3 instead of 1 and just use a mana accumulating weapon, completely surrounded by gem dragons. We basically did the same premise last time around. However, we had to get a little bit more creative this time, since we can't just spam 3 or 2 of them, since I only have the 1 copy. So with this, we end up going with Obsidius. This still does a lot of damage. Ends up having a stun to go with it too. So ends up working out pretty well. And some score reduction. We're mostly using it for its stun and combined with its really heavy splash damage that it ends up having, as well as a potential to do a follow-up attack, which is a bit inconsistent, but when it does happen, it is some pretty nice overall damage. We actually have Ice Goblin on this team. Not utilized too often, but he is a okay troop. He explodes 2 random gems, and then freezes a random enemy. If that was all he did, he would be so absurdly useless. However, he has the effect of gaining an automatic extra turn. And I honestly thought he'd be a lot better when he initially came out, but he's honestly not bad. He's one of those troops you generally wouldn't build around, but if you had to be forced to build around him, like this event, he can be decent. Of course, you're going to get all the mana accumulation from the 2 explodes, or, 50% of it. When I say all, the normal amount that explode would give. But the fact that he gives auto extra turn, this gives you a pretty nice mini board clear, while giving you potentially a lot of options that you can end up doing afterwards. It's not as good as Goblin Rocket, where you have the 1 explode and completely control where it goes, but still has a lot of value that you can end up getting for it. Plus, it's just free freeze, so you'll make sure you'll end up freezing the enemy so they don't get those extra turns in there. But we're just using it as like a little mini mana accumulator, and just getting the full value that we can from Korog's Invention. The last one that we have here for the lower Underspire is pretty much just a faction team. It's literally just a faction team using the Invention to mana accumulate. You could quite literally even just run the faction team if you really wanted to, although that would be a little bit slower, so you would want to put something with hero, either explodey weapon or Korog's Invention or whatever on Earth you have that could possibly function there, as having a hero to offset it would be nice. You can go with a different hero class too if you're going not this weapon. However, I just specifically just go with Slayer here. But if you feel like you're dying too much, you might want to go with Elementalist and use a different weapon, or even just still use this weapon just with Elementalist. Your gem spawn will be a little bit lower if you do. However, Elementalist will have a lot higher survivability. But on this team, similar to Pure Faction, we're just hoping that Illithian Colossus will be enough to tank. Same thing as before, and same win condition as before. We're just going and spamming Illithian Servitor until we win, and just using this as our main mana accumulator, something you cannot do during the faction event, but you can do during the Underspire event. So you can end up putting that in there, and it'll just make things a little bit easier. But anyways, guys, that'll wrap it up for now. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday and Vault weekend this weekend if you celebrate. If you don't celebrate, hopefully you celebrate Vault weekends, because it's a great time to go grind out a bunch of resources. Anyways, guys, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a like on the video. Helps out. It's greatly appreciated. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave in the comment section below. And of course, as per usual, all teams mentioned during this video are in the description if you want to go and copy paste any of them. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.